I might be crazy, and I won't blame you if you laugh at me, but I think this could be the year that Texas A&M finally breaks through from their Texas 8-4 moniker. I'm Matt Moscona, the host of After Further Review on ESPN Radio in Baton Rouge, syndicated throughout the state of Louisiana. Also the host of Locked On LSU and the publisher at LouisianaSports.net. Thank you for finding Overtime with Matt Moscona, where we talk about all things college football, which, of course, I love dearly, and I'm guessing you do as well by the nature of the fact that you found this show. So please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Today, we talk about the Aggies. And look, I happen to enjoy an Aggie joke just like the next guy. But this is a team where I look at and say they have the ingredients and the schedule to finally break through from that 8-4 moniker. Remember, in 2024, Mike Elko's first year in College Station, it was all centered around Connor Wegman. He had preseason All-SEC and Heisman hype, first-round draft pick hype. And they played that opener against Notre Dame and got walloped. The offense was impotent. They lost 23-13 on their home field to the Irish on that opening Saturday of college football. Before the end of the season, Marcel Reed had taken over the starting job for Connor Wegman, and now Wegman is transferred out, and it's Reed's team. So it's a little bit of a different conversation from where it was a year ago. But even with the issues with Connor Wegman, Texas A&M started that season 7-1. After the Notre Dame loss, they went on to win 7 consecutive games before losing 3 in a row to end the season and 4 of their last 5 to finish 8-5 on the season. So Texas A&M in year 2 under Mike Elko is looking for that next step. And if you're skeptical, you have history on your side and are right to be skeptical. Since Texas A&M entered the SEC, this is their loss total every year since they entered the league. In 2012, of course, they went 11-2, that great year with Johnny Manziel. This is their losses by season since then. 4, 5, 5, 5, 6, 4, 5. They went 9-1 in the COVID year, which is the asterisk. 4, 7, 6, 5. They have earned that moniker of Texas 8-4. Like they're just a shoe-in for at least 4 losses every year, and they've been that every year they've been in the SEC, except the first year with Johnny Manziel and the COVID year when they went 9-1. Unfortunately, gave Jimbo a big contract, which then they had to eat later. But the point being that Texas A&M is working against history. Because they just haven't been able to find a way with 3 different coaches to break through that glass ceiling despite having great talent and lots of resources. But I think this is a team that can do it, and I'll give you a few reasons why. When I'm looking at a preseason projection, I always look primarily at 2 things. Who has the fewest questions against the most manageable schedule? Those are the 2 things I look at. Well, when you look at Texas A&M, they return 16 starters from that team a year ago, 6 on offense, 8 on defense, and they returned both their kicker and punter. And Randy Bond made 85% of his field goals a year ago. So you're talking about a team that in every phase returns a ton. Now, Marcel Reed is coming back. And he obviously is the wild card here because Reed was very good at times a year ago. He came off the bench and won the LSU game. He ended up throwing for 1,800 yards, 15 touchdowns. He did have 6 interceptions, completed 61% of his passes. And there was a lot of good for Marcel Reed a season ago. But there was also some head-scratching performances like obviously in the 3-game losing streak there at the end, Auburn, Texas, and then in the bowl game against Southern Cal. Against Texas, he was just 16 of 23 for 146 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. The Auburn game, they lost in quadruple overtime, as we remember that, the 43-41 game. But the question is for Marcel Reed, can he establish more consistency and take that next step with Texas A&M? But what he has going for him is maybe the best offensive line in college football, certainly in the SEC. Look, you're going to get Armaj Reed Adams back this year. Trey Zune, who is your starting left tackle, is back. You're returning a center who was injured a season ago, who returns this year. You're effectively returning 4 of your 5 starters on the offensive line from a team that was really good to begin with. And then when you look at the backs, Le'Veon Moss, who had the really devastating injury a season ago that cost him his season, was averaging over 6 yards a carry at the time of his injury. He ran 121 times for 765, an average of 6.3 yards per carry. So Le'Veon Moss is back. Armani Daniels is back. And you got Reuben Owens, the former 5-star, now in his second year, plus Marcel Reed. So that's 4 guys who have a great ability to run the football behind maybe the best offensive line in college football. That should take tremendous pressure off of Marcel Reed and his ability to throw the ball. It also should make it easier for him to find receivers because teams are going to have to respect A&M's ability to run. And if you can run the ball, you can shorten the game and maybe play good defense, which is the other big question mark for Texas A&M, which is odd to say because Mike Elko, by definition, is a defensive-minded coach and a really good one at that. But Elko, his defense in year one with the Aggies, they were 63rd nationally in total defense. For context, LSU last year in year one under Blake Baker, after they went from 109th in the country in total defense in 2023, that awful defense opposite Jaden Daniels' Heisman winning season, LSU was 61st in the country in total defense. So LSU was actually a couple spots better than A&M. So just for context of where Texas A&M was defensively a season ago and maybe looking to improve year to year. The big knock here for A&M is they took a beating across their defensive front. So they lose Nick Scorton to the draft. They lose Shamar Turner. They lose Shamar Stewart. So you kind of have to remake that defensive front, and they largely did that out of the transfer portal. TJ Searcy comes in from Florida. Dayton Hayes comes in from Colorado. Both of those guys should be on the rotation on the defensive front. Albert Regis is a 315-pound interior player who has some ability. Former 5-star DJ Hicks is there as well across that defensive front. So you have some ability there on the defensive front, but it's a giant question mark. If you figure that out on your defensive front, then A&M's defense could take another step in year 2 under Mike Elko. And if they become a top 30 type defense to complement a team that should be, I think, the team that leads the SEC in rushing in 2025, then it's all about how you navigate your schedule. By the way, I do think Texas A&M leads the SEC in rushing in 2025. You may not have the leading rusher in the conference because of what we just talked about. You got 3 backs and a quarterback that are going to divvy up those attempts. So one guy may not get enough of a lion's share of the carries to be able to pace the entire league. So you may not have a 1,000-yard rusher in that backfield, but I think among the 4 guys I just mentioned, that A&M will be the number 1 rushing offense in the conference in 2025. So then it comes down to schedule, and every team is going to face some gauntlet somewhere in their schedule. And for Texas A&M, it's going to come in October when they play back-to-back-to-back road conference games. Now, the asterisk is there is an open date after the LSU game. So they'll go at Arkansas, at LSU, open at Missouri. But there's a stretch in the schedule. When they play at home against Florida on October 11th, they won't return to Kyle Field until November the 15th. That is a long, grinding stretch to be away from home without a breather. So that's the one that's really going to make or break this schedule, because as you shake it out, they start against UTSA and Utah State at home for those 2 games. Should be easy wins. Then they go on the road to South Bend to play Notre Dame. And I understand there's going to be a lot of hype around Notre Dame this year, but Notre Dame, coming off that team that lost in the national championship game a season ago, has just as many questions as anybody in college football because of all they lost off that team from a season ago. So I'm not so sure I'm just taking a Sharpie and scribbling a dub next to the Irish in that game. I think the Aggies are going to have a great chance to go on the road and win that. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but they got a great chance to go win it. Then they have an open date after the Notre Dame game before they come home to play Auburn, Mississippi State, Florida. Back-to-back-to-back home games after the open date following Notre Dame. Now, Texas A&M should be favored in all 3 of those games. But that stretch there is going to tell you what you're playing for when you get into the stretch we mentioned just a bit ago. Again, they'll be favored at home against Auburn State and Florida. Can they make it unscathed through there? Look, if they lose to Notre Dame and drop one of those home games, now all of a sudden you're a team that probably is falling back on that 8-4 moniker because of what you have ahead. But if they manage to beat Notre Dame or sweep through that Auburn State, Florida series to where if you get to that Arkansas game, if you get to October 11th at 5-1 or 6-0, now all of a sudden you can legitimately be thinking about playoff as you come down the stretch. But here's the stretch we talked about. After the back-to-back-to-back home games against Auburn State and Florida, they have at Arkansas, at LSU, open date at Missouri. Now, I don't know that Arkansas is going to be any great shakes, and I think the Aggies can win that. LSU, the early line's favored by 5.5 in that game in Tiger Stadium against the Aggies, and I think LSU is going to be a bear for a lot of teams to deal with because of what they did in the transfer portal, returning Garrett Nussmeier. I do like the Tigers in that game heavily. But coming down the stretch, it's at Missouri, home against, after LSU, they get an open date. At Missouri, home against South Carolina, a breather against Samford, then they go at Texas. If there's one thing that could keep A&M from reaching that goal and breaking through, just look at the road schedule. At Notre Dame, at Arkansas, at LSU, at Missouri, at Texas. If they can find a way to navigate that road schedule and maybe only drop 2 of those and win all of their home games, then you're looking at a 10-2 season. I don't think that's necessarily in the cards for Texas A&M, but I do think this is an Aggie team that will find its way to 9-3 this season. When you can run the ball and when you can play defense, that will travel, and they will manage to win 1 or 2 of those road games that we're not expecting them to win. If you're thinking of Notre Dame, LSU, Texas as the 3 really challenging road games, I think they can handle Arkansas and Missouri, but remains to be seen. But if they manage to win one of those road games that I mentioned and hold serve at home, then A&M could be looking at a 9-3, 10-2 type season and knocking on the door of the playoff in year 2 under Mike Elko. My final pick for A&M is a 9-3 season, and depending how that 9-3 looks, it could be a season that lands them in the playoff. But until we see a 9-3 team get into the college football playoff, it's hard to project that for a team going 9-3. But I got the Aggies breaking through their 8-4 moniker and getting a 9-3 in 2025. Let me know what you think. Drop your comments below. Please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you love college football, keep coming back here on Overtime with Matt Moscona.